Hi, John. Thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
Well, like everyone else, I'm squirreled away in my home and I'm coming to you from my home office. And I want to warn you, my home is very near the largest naval jet base in the world, Oceana. So we may have some F-18s fly over and we won't
Oh,
be able to hear a thing.
okay. I'm glad you warned us.
Okay.
Good. That's your office.
Yes.
Yeah.
As everyone else in the world right now, I am staying home and avoiding spreading or catching and spreading the coronavirus.
Well, it looks like an ancient mysteries vault that you got there.
Believe me, this is over 30 years of researching ancient cultures and writing all those books.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, having traveled with you to Egypt, I know you're very selective about, you've been there enough times, you don't bring something every trip. So the
No,
things you have are very precious.
true,
Yeah.
true.
So fill me in on what you're up to. I mean, I haven't seen you certainly since we've all gone into isolation, but I know
Yeah,
that you've been busy with a lot of different projects.
yes.
Let's
Well,
start with one of those.
when Edgar Cayce's campus closed down due to this virus, I began building online courses and virtual tours, which my colleagues at A.R.E are calling armchair tours. And they're going to be to sacred sites all over the world and beyond.
Hmm.
Beyond is because Edgar Cayce talked a lot about where souls live beyond this world and how they travel. So I'm going to do one video about celestial sites, but
Wow.
most of them are going to be sacred sites on the planet Earth. And we begin, of course, with Egypt.
Wow.
And I'm doing three of those, each 90-minute tour. First will be all the temples of Egypt, and then will come the tombs, which are beautifully painted, and the pyramids. And then the final one will be of the papyrus teachings and the Book of the Dead.
What a wonderful idea. I mean,
Well,
that just sounds like, in the absence of being able to go to Egypt, just having the chance, and then people don't have to worry about, vaccines or diet or, air travel.
that is so true. And let me tell you, giving a virtual tour, I can explain so much more than when I'm with a crowd of tourists and other tourists from other
Oh
crowds
God, rush in
and
here, rush
some
in there.
guide saying, move along, move along. Now we can really look at something and I can tell them a little more about it.
That's great. And
Yeah.
you were saying, is footage that you yourself have filmed? Is that
Yes.
the wow?
Most of it are photos I've taken over the last 30 some years, some videos, and then I contacted archaeologists and professional photographers who had photos and got permission or paid for it from them. And then there were some stock photos on those stock photos companies that I paid to get, so that I had the best look. I wanted the brightest, clearest photo or video possible.
Wow, that's great. And is like
Oh,
when you
here's one. This right now, this is the Isis temple, a beautiful temple on Philae Island in Aswan,
I remember
Egypt.
it, yeah.
Yeah. And this just shows you the chambers you have to go through to get to the Holy of Holies. So uh, I will have concepts as well as beautiful imagery.
That's fantastic. Now I
Yeah.
remember when we would go into the king's chamber and do the meditation. Are you going to
Oh,
recreate
yes.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Now
special.
this photo you're looking at is Winston Tree, our representative in China, who keeps the Cayce work going in China. And we are in the hypostyle or pillared hall of the massive Karnak temple, 250 acres large.
Wow.
And he and I are marveling at some of the carvings on the columns and what they're teaching.
And it's
And then below, I have an artist's depiction of what it might have looked
oh,
like originally.
yeah, that's what I was wondering. The color is really
Yeah.
really
Well,
beautiful.
David Roberts of the 1800s went all through Egypt without a camera, but he was an excellent artist and illustrator. And so he illustrated all these temples with color
Wow.
because he saw remnant color. There is remnant color. And I'll
Yeah.
show some of that in my videos. So he helped a great deal in when it came to coloring what might have been the original color of temples.
Okay. And then about how far away are you out from? Is that going to be available in a couple weeks for people or?
Oh no, it should be available. Well, maybe a couple of weeks, but I'll have my part done next week. But then, the staff of A.R.E has to do their part to get it uploaded and all.
Yeah. What a great idea. I think one of the things that the lockdown or whatever, the isolation, and we're all getting so creative. We're kind
Yeah,
of looking at, since we can't go to these places or see each other, kind of what
right.
can we do? And I think that's
Yeah,
just a great idea. I'm really impressed seeing A.R.E kind of pushing the envelope and doing more
yeah,
and more, offering our membership and others just different opportunities to continue with the Cayce work, to continue with the spiritual
yeah.
development material that's so important.
And the whole human family feels like one family because we're all in this
That's
together.
true.
It has spread throughout. I think
Yeah.
that's the fulfillment of some of the prophecies that you and I have studied.
Yes. Yeah, and there's stuff going on with nature, like there's dolphins in Venice, that haven't been seen there for
Yeah,
50, 80 years, something like that.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
the natural kingdom, the
yes.
footage from space, there's no pollution coming out of these different countries. So there is
Yeah.
something. Have you gotten an intuitive sense? I mean, I know you're gonna be doing a webinar where you'll interact with folks live, I believe it is, and you'll be taking
I, I
questions.
I did the first webinar a couple of weeks ago live. We had nearly 400 people join it. It was wonderful. And that's the one where I did the prophecies that are converging in our times that I
Hmm.
wrote the book about.
Hmm.
But in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do one explaining how you can tap into the source of all resources, even material ones,
Hmm.
and survive this period of time. It works off the same principle that the DEA and the FBI and the IRS use. All resources have sources. What are the sources of your resources? And I show how to tap into the great source of
Ah,
all resources.
that's awesome. So with you, I mean, I know you're a regular meditator, deep practice. Have you gotten an intuitive sense of what's going on here? Like, do you get a sense of why humanity is going through this kind of timeout that we're all been forced
Yes.
into?
You may recall back in 2012, it was the end of the Mayan age of movement or change
Hmm.
in December of 2012, and everybody felt like nothing really happened. But actually, it was shifting to a new age the Maya called the spirit of all living things, bringing all of us back. And this is followed by the age of melting back into oneness as the morning stars out of the book of Job in the Bible
Hmm.
talked about us being one group of morning stars who sang together as we came here. Well, the Maya say we are in this period of awakening to the spirit of all living things. All of us are one spirit. And as you beautifully shared, even nature participates in this collective morning star family of ours. So I think this is moving us toward a higher consciousness of oneness among ourselves, all humanity being one family, and oneness with infinity, so that we don't look out there and see us as the only ones here and the only life being lived. It's
Hmm.
not so. There are many dimensions to life.
Yeah. It's like a parent's advice. They tell a kid, stop and think. And I think that we're all being forced to stop. And kind of what we do with
Yes,
that is up to us. And my
yes,
sense is that when things return to whatever the new normal is going to be after this, I think that this period, there's probably going to be many books written about what people discovered or went through or learned or how this period changed their life. because
Yes.
I think that there's that, it just seems like there's that potential.
Yes.
And I sense it in myself and from people that I'm talking to, that there is a, you know, not everybody's going to use it the same way, but I think that it's certainly offering a potential for the people that want to use it to turn inward and access that higher mind, or kind of, you know, access the ideal, and maybe go forward from here with kind of a different movement, with a different approach to the rest of their life.
Yeah. As you know, Edgar Cayce said way, way back in prehistory, we had full consciousness of our connectedness to the source of life and all the resources of that source. And we could even use them in materiality. And we did so in Atlantis and Lemuria. But we gradually came too deeply into matter and we've lost touch with it. But now we're rising out of that and becoming aware again. And that's this event, this worldwide event, is forcing us to move into that search for something beyond physicality, because right now physicality hurts.
Yeah. Now, do you get a sense that, you know, that whatever the new normal is, when we start going back to leaving our houses and working and shopping and all that, do you get a sense that, in a way, we're getting prepared for, you know, whether the, you know, we've had viruses coming, and this one seems to be, as far as the reaction the world has taken to it, it's pretty unprecedented. But do you get a sense that down the road there's going to be perhaps more viral, more pandemics, that there's going to be something we have to, that this is kind of something that we should pay attention to, and not with fear, but the changes that are the potentials, that'll be helpful going forward. Some people will make them and perhaps some won't.
Yes. Yeah, you see, everyone's realizing no matter where you live on the planet, you can affect the whole human community.
Mm-hmm.
So think,
That's right.
think about what you're doing.
That's right.
We are interconnected. There is a collective consciousness,
Right.
but it's also a collective physicality.
Right.
And what you're doing where your little hideaway on the planet is will affect the whole community.
Right. So if you hug somebody in Alaska and take a flight and hug somebody in in Florida, they're connected.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Very, very.
Yeah. So you're doing this work with the with doing the virtual tours. You've got these webinars coming up. And
right.
What questions are you getting? I know that probably the most common question that I think people will ask you is about Egypt, past lives in Egypt, Edgar Cayce when he was Ra-Ta, and if you remember the connection with Ra-Ta in Egypt. Do you have anything that you could share about that?
Well, I get some of those questions. I used to get a lot more of those. And yes, I had an incarnation in Egypt. Actually, I had a couple. But one of them was during the period of Edgar Cayce's incarnation as the high priest Ra-Ta.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when I look at Egyptian hieroglyphs, I intuitively know I know that.
Yeah.
I know what's that. Or if I see an image from ancient Egypt, I go, oh, I know what that means.
Yeah.
It comes somewhere from within me, you know. But most of the questions I'm getting now are prophecy questions, like what is going on? Has this been foreseen? Can you give us some idea of how long it's going to go on and what it means? And fortunately, a couple of years ago, I wrote the book Prophecies Converging in Our Times,
Mm-hmm.
and I put it all in there because I saw this trend coming.
Yeah.
That all the prophecies seem to be focusing right on this period of time. And so I put them all in one book, and I also did a video or two on it and a few classes when we could travel and do classes. You know, now we're sitting home. I have to do them virtually online. So that's the most common question I get. And I've shared with you that I do think it is a pandemic to catch all human life,
Mm-hmm.
all of the children of God, all of the morning stars. Pay attention. You are all one. And we're going to start training you that way, even though it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus compared enlightenment and growth to a woman pregnant, and you are forced to dilate your heart and mind to deliver your true spiritual self. And as any woman can tell you, dilating to deliver a baby or your new self is painful. You have to go through illusions you've been carrying and break through them. That's tricky. That takes time. And it also hurts a little bit because we like our illusions. We've
Hmm.
become fond of them.
Hmm.
You, as a psychologist, know this very well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes if you don't let go, sometimes it gets shaken from you.
Yeah,
And
that's
so I
right.
think that
Oh,
that's what
yeah,
there's a lot of shaking loose of things.
that's right.
Yeah.
Ooh,
The other
yeah,
thing I thought as we're talking is, it's like what a blessing in a way that we're prepared as far as virtual contact with each other. Like if this wasn't, you and I are having this conversation because there's the internet and that sort of thing. You can imagine what let's say the time of the Spanish flu, where
yeah,
there was just no communication. Like we have, it's a global pandemic, but we also have global connectivity where
right.
we can process this. And it's not like we're having a normal relationship, normal contact, but we're still able to have some contact.
Yeah, see, the physical world has evolved to this point that allows us to come back into oneness.
Hmm.
No horseman riding 100 miles to tell us what's going on elsewhere is required anymore. The satellites are catching everything and channeling it back to us.
Yeah.
So even materiality is revealing the movement toward a collective consciousness, a
Yeah.
collective awareness of all humanity. And that is what's happening also in our minds and spirits. And that's what the prophecies predicted would happen. And that's where we are. We're moving through that period.
Yeah. And so, Edgar Cayce would often reference "choose thou." And what do you see as the choices that we're being asked to make? Are they choices between, do you want to remain physically identified, or do you want to use this as an opportunity to move more into spiritual identity or identification? Is that some of what do you see as the choices that we're facing?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. See, our human nature, as opposed to our divine nature, our human nature likes predictable situations. We like things to be status quo, steady Eddie.
Hmm.
Don't surprise me. Don't turn the world upside down on me. I finally figured the world out. But unfortunately, our destiny is beyond the world. So these lovely little things we hold on to are disappearing right before our eyes. And that is forcing us to gain a greater view, a bigger view, and adjust ourselves.
Yeah.
Your choices are fight it or cooperate.
Yeah.
In fact, when this first started, let me share a dream I got. I love that Cayce taught us to work with our
Yeah.
dreams, and you as a psychologist know how important dreams are.
Hmm.
I woke early on in January when this was first starting with the dream that there were two big waves coming, and I was in the ocean at Virginia Beach up to my waist, and I looked out and I saw the first wave was big. And a voice said to me, if you can learn to catch this wave and body surf it, the bigger one that's coming next won't knock you over.
Oh wow.
And when I woke up, I knew it meant bad things are coming. Powerful things of change are coming, and you better learn how to surf it because the next change is going to knock you for a loop if you're
Yeah.
not already body surfing.
That's a great
So,
that's a
oh
great
yeah,
symbol.
it was powerful. It
Yeah.
has haunted me ever since.
Yeah, because the waves, they can knock you down and you struggle, or if you learn how to surf, you can actually enjoy them. You can use
Right,
them positively. So that's just a real helpful, and I think a collective dream. I think that has meaning in a much broader sense for all of us to prepare that this is the first wave.
right.
It's like a test. See how you do. Stock up on toilet paper, whatever you want to do. The next one might be But what I always seek when I think of this is it's important to try to work with fear constructively, because I think that
Yeah.
when we get stuck in fear, that's where people build the bunkers and they start seeing everybody as an enemy. And I think to use fear the way you can use anger constructively. So okay,
Yeah.
prepare yourself.
Right.
Don't get in the deep end, but use your fear. Then think about what you can do and how to prepare. And I had a similar dream to you. Mine was of being on the top of a very high building, and off in the distance I saw three like tornadoes, like cyclones coming, and the top of the building was like a park. So it was like other people didn't realize that they were on the top building. It was just, selling popcorn and strollers and a beautiful day in the park. So I could see these cyclones coming. And my first thought was, how do I get out of here? Just run. And then the second thought was, just be where you are. Meaning just don't get afraid. Whatever needs to happen is going to happen. You're conscious of it. Maybe you can help the others deal with what's coming.
That's a fantastic dream. I
Yeah.
love the imagery of, buildings being earthy earth, and
Yeah.
then the park being a lovely dimension of joyful life, shared life, wonderful. And then the cyclones being, pay attention, change is coming.
Yeah. Well, John, it's like I always enjoy talking to you so much because I sound so much smarter when I talk to you. Because the vibration, the field that we entered, I'm getting these new ideas. It's like even though we're not in the same physical space,
Right.
one of the things what's coming to me is I'm realizing, that psychologically, we're always preparing for what comes next. Or even on the developmental, physical, you kind of, let's say when you're in your first third of your life, you're
Yes.
preparing to work. And then when you're working, you're preparing to retire. So you're preparing what comes next. And every generation always looks down on the new generation. They're always going to hell in a handbasket. That's the way our parents felt about our generation, how they felt about them. And I think that we've looked at the younger generation and the addiction or the connection they have with technology. We see them in the cafes and they're
Yeah.
on a date and they're texting each other. We're like, what is this? And then they show each other some stuff. And now I'm thinking, oh, they're the seeds. They're there to show us, to prepare us for how right now all of us are using technology. They're way ahead of the curve because
Yeah.
they've been doing it for a long time. Us dinosaurs, we're figuring out how to
Yeah.
use Zoom and webinars,
Right.
stuff that they've been doing for a long
Right.
time. So I wonder if some of this, that as above so below, we've always been connected spiritually, but
Yeah.
now we're getting connected with the internet, not physically, but somewhere in between. So it's between physical and spiritual. It's this kind of thing. So it's just a thought I had as we were talking that I hadn't had before.
Yeah. Oh, it's very true. Again, a sign of the times and a sign of movement, new change, new things coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you remember Edgar Cayce when he would give these readings, and he would scan the consciousness, and then he'd say, he wouldn't say it all, when he would give a normal reading, he wouldn't say anything. But at the beginning of some reading, he'd say, "Oh my, a fourth dimensional mind." It would be
Yes.
like, "Yay, I can
Yay!
I can
Finally,
I can talk." Right.
in one reading, he said, "Oh, a fourth dimensional mind. How refreshing!"
Exactly. That's how I feel. I feel like you're letting me out of jail to kind of to play in the field of thoughts and imagination and spirit.
Right.
Yeah. Good. Well, one of the things that we have is, since this is a live, this is being broadcast live, we
Okay.
have questions coming in. And so
All right.
what we can do, we got plenty of time. We can take a question and see where it leads us.
Okay.
But we have a question from Mary, and her question is, could you comment on the role of intention, in quotes, in human action from what you know of the readings of Edgar Cayce, please? So
Yes.
the question about what's the role of intention in our
Yeah.
behavior from Edgar Cayce's perspective.
Mary, that's an excellent question, and Edgar Cayce addressed it when he was attuned to the universal consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
He would actually say that the very building you're living in is influenced by the original intention for building it.
Mm.
And if you could pick up on those intentions, you could pick the better building to live in.
Ah,
How physical is that?
yeah.
The very intention that the designers and the builders had influences the vibes of a physical building.
Wow.
And he would take it further and say, the very intention in the lovemaking of your parents that conceived you influence the vibes of your development and still influence you. That's genetic at a code at a higher level.
So
Believe me.
obviously, our parents were deeply in love and
Oh,
expressing highest ideals. That
Right.
explains everything.
When I first read that, I called my mom and I said, "Hey, Mom, when you and Dad were conceiving me, did you have any spiritual ideals at the time?" And she laughed and said, "Oh, absolutely not, honey, but I love you anyway."
Oh, well, maybe they were deeply seated in her pre-life
love.
planning. Yes.
They had the spirit of love. That's what we needed.
Yes.
But as far as spirituality, and she was a very spiritual, mystical woman,
Yeah.
my mother, that wasn't going on at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, at that age, you've got the physical desires, and it's all
Yeah.
mixed together. But as
Yeah.
you were saying about intention in a building, right away it clicked to me that, when Edgar Cayce built the hospital here, and they had to leave it. And I remember reading that Edgar Cayce, I don't think this was in a reading, but Edgar Cayce said it, and I don't know if Gladys wrote it down, I don't know where I read it, but he said, this building will never succeed as anything other than the intention for which it was built. And it seems that history proved that it was used as a nightclub and a hospital and barracks, and it just nobody could figure out what to do with it until it came back to being with the A.R.E. So that shows that point of even a structure that this hospital, this ground was built with a spiritual intention.
Right. And remember, when he was young and he started to gain his ability to tap into the universal consciousness, he developed the intention, I don't want to do this except to help people, to do good for people. So all the time that he was tapping in and channeling information to people, he was filtering it through the intention to help them to do good, not to put them down, not to condemn them, not to weigh them down with their karma, but give them some of the grace that is latent within them, that they can rise to a better level and overcome their karma. So intention shaped everything he did. Now, as an ego man like me and you, and materially needing materialism, he did go looking for money and oil and other ways to use his psychic ability to earn money. But all his money came to him via helping others.
Yeah.
Those who had been helped. When he asked the readings, how can we support this work? How can I make a living? I have 2 children and a wife. The answer was, go to those who have been benefited by what you're doing, by this type of work. And that's where he got his funding.
Not from oil wells.
No, he never got anything out of the oil wells, nor did any A.R.E. member who went after the oil wells or the gold. And when I was young, I was part of that group. My buddies and I actually went digging for gold treasure using Cayce readings.
Oh,
we
that was
found nothing but arrowheads.
Was that the Blackbeard's treasure?
Yeah, Blackbeard's hideaway.
That's supposed to be around here somewhere. Right. I have many as I'm going to sleep, many a time I imagine finding that treasure chest of gold.
Do you know, one woman came to Edgar Cayce and said that in the reading she was told by him that some previous people from history had buried gold in her backyard. And she said, "Can you tell me where it is?" And he said, "Oh, please search for the real gold that's eternal." And she said, "Well, okay, just tell me where it is."
Is there somebody else there I can talk to? Yeah. I remember reading, there was a reading where a guy in a past life had stolen all this gold and buried it. And the guy got caught up on the gold. And then Cayce was saying, look, this isn't about the gold. It's about you got a karma. And he said, basically, these sources will not be used to do anything destructive to self.
That's right. That's right.
The thing, that question about intention, that was really helpful for me, because I used to be, in a way, dominated by what other people might think. So like, I always give this example. If I was at the grocery store and somebody in front of me was a couple of dollars short, I would hesitate, because I'd say, well, what if they take it wrong, and all these kind of things. I'd get caught up in their reaction. And Cayce's thing just attached to your intention. And so it's much more like just my heart was in the right place to try to help somebody. And usually a person will respond to your intention. But if somebody doesn't take it well, you can't control outcomes. So that was very helpful for me. To loosen up and just kind of, is my heart in the right place, then I just got to do what I'm going to do.
Right.
All right, you ready for another question?
Yeah, sure.
This is from Derek. So Derek says, I'm wondering if there's a particular reading or teaching from Edgar Cayce that has stood out for either of us as being a favorite, or that you find so remarkable. Derek says there's so many, but he finds the story of the little ones, the brownies in the tree, so fascinating. So can you think of a particular reading or story from the Cayce work? You probably have so many. What's the first one that comes to your mind?
Well, Derek's is the same as mine. I wrote a whole book on fairies, gnomes, sprites, all the little people, based on Cayce. When he was a young child, he saw them and played with them. And later, when he was older and his health was failing, he started to see them again. So he got a reading and asked, why am I seeing them again? Because you're getting close to the fourth dimension. You're going to leave the third pretty soon. And a couple of years later, he passed on.
Oh, wow. So if somebody tells you, I'm starting to see the little ones, you kind of like go, well, okay, well.
No.
Get your affairs in order.
No. I when I was writing the book, Angels, Fairies, and the Unseen Forces, the Dark Forces, I forget the actual title the marketing department put on it. But when I was writing that book, I said to the source of consciousness, hey, I cannot put my name on this book until I have personal direct experiences with some fairies.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I was leading a tour in England, and I was in the Chalice Well Garden, and I started seeing the fairies in the garden.
Really?
And then I knew I can write this book.
Wow.
I can put my name on this book because I have seen two types of fairies. I saw two different types in that garden.
What did they look like?
Well, the tiniest, prettiest ones were little white sparkles that were playing in a waterfall in a creek that runs through the Chalice Well Garden. The larger ones were bluish to purplish clothing, or if it wasn't clothing, it was their body radiance. But they were not thrilled that I was looking at them, and so they were a little pouty. Okay, we'll let you see us because the creative forces say to do so, but we're really not thrilled about you.
Oh wow!
Poking your mind into our realm.
Yeah.
But I appreciated it, gave them gratitude, thanks, and pulled away.
Yeah, there's as much as I've been into this work for, my great grandmother was a medium. I haven't really, I can't say that I've seen these kind of things. I haven't seen a apparition. I mean, I've had meditative experiences that have been really, really profound. But as far as really getting into the vibration, like seeing an aura or something like that, sometimes I'll see like a little rim of light around somebody, but I never know if it's never like what I imagine Edgar Cayce could see or perceive. Do you have other experiences like that you could share?
My late wife was a seer, but she was very private and secret, so she only kept it to herself and her husband. But I didn't know this for sure when I first married her until one night, in the middle of the night, and I had a big job that I was needed sleep in order to do. One night, she leans over in dead sleep and says, "Don't move." And I come to wake and I go, what do you mean? I was sleeping. Don't move. They're moving through the room right now. Don't move. And
Wow.
I'm going, oh man, I got terrified. I looked around the bedroom. There was no one that I could see. And I could watch her eyes follow them through the room. And then they left. She said, okay, they're gone. And she laid back down and went to sleep. I was
Wow.
so juiced up. It took me an hour to get back to sleep.
Wow.
But she saw them elsewhere too. She was a seer, and she could see auras. Also, if she came near another woman, she could feel that they were pregnant before they even knew it.
Oh.
And so some of her girlfriends, she would actually tell them, oh, you're pregnant. And she'd go, really? Am I? And then later they'd find out they sure were.
Wow.
So she had all this intuitive inner ability. So I was around it a lot. But at that time, I was not seeing them because I was so focused on my outer job and supporting this family, which was hard work.
Yeah. So you're finding now you're able to do both? You're kind of more inner and outer focus simultaneously?
Yes, so much more. And in fact, I actually budget time now to be in the other dimensions of consciousness because I gain so much, both physically and in knowledge wise. Yeah, physically it renews me so much, but knowledge wise, often when I wake, I have a new insight into something I'm writing or designing or teaching or working on, or I have a message for myself that turns out to be so valuable that I am just grateful. And I will say thank you for months for that, a heads up on something that's coming, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, you know, there are times, you know, we have these meditations where I come out, and for a prolonged time, I feel no pain in my body, so energized, you know. But then I look in the mirror and I still see my dad there. You know, I'm like going. So it's like a spiritual, physical, mental reality that's not quite. I mean, I guess the next dimension as it starts to go into the physical.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, sometimes if it's really deep and I start to return, I cannot actually feel the body. And I know those arms and hands are mine, but I'm not in them yet. And I find myself staying calm. Or initially, early on, I would get very anxious about this. But eventually I knew I could eventually naturally get back into my body, thank God. Yeah. So I would gradually transition. That's how separate, when you get that high, how separate. Do you remember when Edgar Cayce was giving those readings for the medical doctors, and one of them didn't believe he was really in tune and tore his fingernail off?
Yes.
Edgar didn't move, didn't flinch. That's how separate. Yeah. But when he came back into his body, he screamed from pain.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens if you get really deep or high. You're in other dimensions and you're really there. It's really the essence of you. And then you come back into the physical manifestation of you, the cellular expression of you, and that's a different dimension, and you come back in, and sometimes it takes a little while to come back in.
What I'm thinking of right now is, you know, some of the Cayce stuff is so, you know, when you start out, it's kind of so out there. Like I remember most people think of Troy as kind of a mythic place. Right. And Cayce gave readings for people that apparently were reincarnated from that time. And I remember, I think it was someone got a lot of readings, was told they were the reincarnation of Achilles. And it talked about how he had the injury to his the Achilles tendon had been his demise. And the man was told, you could have healed that then with meditation. Don't make that same mistake now.
You know who that was?
Yes.
That was Morton Blumenthal, the guy who funded the building of the original building on the campus.
I thought that's right. Was it?
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Like, how would you use meditation to heal a ruptured Achilles tendon, or to deal with some arthritis or whatever, all the aches and pains that people have?
Yeah. Now, see, now you're getting into the content of my next webinar.
All right, give us a teaser and then stop.
Okay.
Say, and the deep secret answer is, oh, John, we're out of time.
Yeah. All right, now we're going to take a short break for a
That's
commercial.
right. It's like they do on, have you seen on like Netflix?
Right,
They always
right,
end the episode with something like you're dying to
right,
see the
right.
next one.
Okay, here it is. If all of your sources are external material sources, surgery, medicine, ointments, massage, chiropractic adjustments, etc., that's all you have. But if you can understand that all healing, no matter what you're using out here, actually comes from within, and the tap into the source of healing, which is the spirit of life, and it has the perfected vision of you. Your material body, your subtle body is known perfectly. If damage comes to the physical, if you can like withdraw, normally we call that shock, you withdraw from the body, you keep the perfect image of your body from assuming the damage. So you, okay, and when you're in the spirit, then you must channel the flow of the life, and that must flow into the body. Now, if you come out and you find yourself with an opportunity for medicine, massage, surgery, etc., that's the physical world responding. But the real healing's coming from you tapping in to the life essence, that
Yeah.
life force that created everything and
Yes.
is in every cell, and you actually can rebuild it.
That, go ahead.
Well, during Edgar's time, people didn't think you could rebuild nerve cells, brain cells, and now they know you can. Well, back then he was saying, sure you can. If you bring in the right forces, the brain will reproduce.
Well, I'm reminded of, how Edgar Cayce talks about we rebuild our body every 7 years. Every cell is replaced. And I remember somebody asked a question. They said, well, why are we aging? Or why am I, my body now is not as good as it was 7 years ago. And his answer was something like habits. It's your mental, physical habits that are perpetuating your physical body the way it is. And so somehow we have to change our physical, spiritualize our mental habits to change, something like that.
Right. In Taoism, the ancient Chinese Taoism, you are actually consuming the life force in this destiny, this lifetime, this incarnation. Unless you learn how to reverse the flow, tap back into it, then you can rejuvenate on a regular basis, because you've been consuming it. And the body's aging from consuming it. But if you pause, back away for 15, 20 minutes, an hour, on a regular basis, go back in, you can rejuvenate all of that. And when it comes back into the body, you're renewed.
That explains so much. It's like when I first started meditating when I was 17, I was so gung-ho with it. I did it twice a day for 5 years. I might have missed one session. And I remember I would have, with my eyes closed, just in my eyes, I would see it was like a lava lamp. I would see this lava bubble come up and it would disperse, but then there'd be another one that'd come behind it. And I remember, I wasn't focusing on it, but I was just trying to be in stillness. But it was just this image that just kept coming up. And then I got away from meditating, and then it took me a long time. I'd be like, where's the lava lamp? And it would just be flat. So it makes sense that there's that it was somehow representing that motion that, because like you said, gravity falls, and then spirituality is kind of bringing it back up.
It is so wonderfully depicted in Egypt and the Mayan lands and India as the life force is like a cobra curled at the base of your spine. If you start to raise it up and move it up to the brain centers, the brain starts to rejuvenate the body. Mm-hmm. You have raised your vibes, and the vibes renew the consumption of your energy.
Yeah, there's those readings with meditating and using those devices that bring gold and the vibration of gold and silver, and how that can be, somehow that vibration is rejuvenating to
Yes,
physical and
renewing. Yeah.
spiritual body. Now I
Yeah.
saw, Maridel, our good
Yes.
friend in California.
Yes.
She had a question about the waves. How did you, what's your sense of how to prepare for that? That.
Okay. The imagery in my dream was that I was on out at First Street, where in Virginia Beach. That's where the surfers surf.
Yeah.
First Street,
Right.
and I was waist deep in the water, enjoying it. It was a beautiful day, and I looked back out at the sea, and here was coming a rather large wave, and I became concerned, um, and I intuited that it meant more than the physical waves, because unfortunately Virginia Beach doesn't have big waves. So the surfers learn to surf on
Right.
smaller
Yeah.
waves. So I knew this was symbolic. I could feel the symbol of it. But behind it, I saw a gigantic wave coming. Then a voice said to me, "Learn how to body surf the first wave, and you will not be knocked over by the second wave." And so I took the waves as something coming in your life that is too big for you, unless you learn how to, just like you would in the ocean, you would not fight that wave. You might duck under it, but
Yeah.
you're still going to be in turmoil under
Yeah.
the wave. But the easiest thing to do is turn around and surf with the wave. Once you flow with it, you're
Yeah.
enjoying yourself.
It's like the art of life, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
it's going with these, taking these energies. Like Cayce said, find the opportunity in the stumbling block.
Yeah.
So seeing a wave as a source of energy, even joy.
Yeah.
Now
He
she asked
always
though. Oh, go ahead.
he always started his guidance with, first, use what you have at hand. Look around. With every challenge, there is an opportunity there somewhere. You have to see it.
It's like a James Bond movie. He always
Yes.
finds something to help him. So then she asks, is there anything specifically, like having had that dream going forward, is there something that you're building, preparing? Are you doing anything other? I mean, is there something physical, mental, or I would imagine spiritually that you're doing to prepare for the next wave?
Absolutely. Immediately when I woke, I and I gotta say, this is like a feeling, like an intuition.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately became extremely conservative with my spending, and storing up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
for a rainy day, not being so flowing as if life was going on happily forever. So I paused there. I also retreated from a lot of my pleasure seeking. I pulled back and started to stay centered a little more.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't going out a lot and spending money here and there. I wasn't buying new clothes or going to the movies to be entertained by some story that didn't relate to anything.
Yeah.
Escape entertainment, that we always,
Yeah.
I noticed I wasn't watching television because it had no meaning to me, and they just were repeating terrifying news all the time. That had no meaning. I had to come from within more than from without.
Ah.
I immediately did that.
Yeah.
Then as things got worse and worse, I have to say, I looked down the road and saw, my God, is this going to go on for months? If it is, we're all in trouble. Even at A.R.E, we had to take pay cuts. We had to lay off some people. The campus is closed down.
Yeah.
This is really shocking events. And then all my friends that I have known over the years in restaurants, all the staff and the cooks and the owners of these restaurants that I was a personal friend with, they're all out on the street.
Yeah.
And my heart started to bleed for them. And I realized this is a big wave of change coming.
Yeah.
So I prepared myself materially, emotionally, mentally.
I'm as you're talking, I'm thinking about. I don't think I was consciously preparing, but I would have to say 2019 was probably my best financial year. Like things had been building, and then I was able to get out of debt and I was able to actually save some money. And that was a good wave, but now I'm seeing like, you know, it's cutting down. I'm not in
Right.
debt or anything like that, but I could see how you're saying it was like,
Right.
for me, it was more intuitive, this sense of, you know, just get the money, start saving, pay off your debts, get conservative. Yeah, that's a good thought.
That's the great thing about Edgar Cayce. He never got you so spaced out that you lost touch with Earth reality. He always wanted balance. You always had to do what is decent and in order with the realities of physical life. You have to pay your rent. If you want to stay sheltered, you have to pay your rent. Earth demands it.
Yeah.
Yes, you can be in the spirit and have virtual rent payments, but that ain't going to. I love the scene when the tax collector comes to Jesus and he turns to Peter and says, Peter, go drop your hook into the sea, and the first fish that comes up, the coin will be in its mouth. Now, that wasn't a showy stunt. That was a teaching that deep beneath the surface of what we see from this reality, which is just the surface of the sea, all the life of the sea exists. That's beneath the surface of consciousness. You have, just like the glory of the depths of the ocean, you have all of that beneath the surface of your subconscious mind. Dip your hook into it and pull out the material coins you need. And that's what my webinar is going to be about in a couple of weeks.
Good. I think folks can use guidance about how to throw their hook into the sea.
Yes.
You know, especially in times of fear and doubt. It feels like you're trying to fish in a storm.
Yes.
And trying to help people learn how to do that, because, you know, maybe that's the opportunity, or one of the opportunities people have in this time, that they have free time, they have anxiety with it, but maybe they can use that constructively. And so that's something they'll learn in your webinar.
Yeah, and the great thing about Edgar Cayce was he was extremely practical. He didn't get too airy-fairy. Yes, he used the unseen forces to solve your material needs. He used them, but he also looked at the material world and told you what's coming to you in the depths of your consciousness will stimulate the collective world of materiality and bring it to you. And I have stories showing how people were in difficult situations, but I told them to put it in the collective consciousness. And weeks or months later, what happened? Someone in the collective came to them and resolved their challenge. That's the concept. That's the great thing about Cayce's visions.
Yeah. And then it's also the element of patience, you know, that you gotta, sometimes that you don't find that fish with the gold in its mouth the first time you throw the hook in there.
Oh,
you might have to throw it 4 or 5 times.
Oh yeah, I have had to fish for weeks, sometimes years,
to get that gold. So how do people find all these things? It's just edgarcayce.org, and they put John Van Auken or webinar.
It should. The members will get a notice, but they could go to edgarcayce.org, which is org/online. And everything online is at that address. edgarcayce.org/online.
Okay, and it's a webinar, and what's the title? It's Prophecy, Edgar Cayce on Prophecy?
They changed the title to something, getting help from the source of all something or other. I forget how they said it, but it's getting help from the source.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you in very material ways that the metaphysical world can affect physical world.
And this, as a webinar, it'll be interactive, right? So they can ask you questions. And
there'll be a period of teaching, and then there'll be a period of questions.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, that's really an opportunity for people.
Yes.
Because you're usually a moving target, trying to get you sitting down. I haven't seen that very often.
No, that's true.
Well,
but this is a new reality.
Yeah. Who knows what's the future? We got one more question, and then we'll end for the day. But this is a good question from Jake. He says, how does one determine one's purpose when continually met with rejection and doubt during a life change? So how do you determine your purpose when just things aren't, you're going through a life change and there's just so much rejection, doubt going on?
Again, without talking a little further with Jake, to
Mm-hmm.
determine his patterns,
Right.
like you were talking about habit patterns.
Right.
We all have habit patterns, and those are going to inhibit us, limit us. But let's assume, just general human beings, when you're met with all sorts of closure on the outer world, you have to begin to connect through the subconscious world. The outer conscious world is rejecting you for various reasons, but the subconscious world can pick up on your intentions. And if your intentions are to express in a good way, to contribute to humanity, to make life better for all of us, you go in and you put that in the collective, and you start to long for a way, a means, a channel through which you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you the subconscious will react eventually by bringing that to you. You can't let the outer people overwhelm you with their projection of their own inner judgment. Don't do that.
I was, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, go. I watched Kevin's, Kevin did a webinar after yours. And one of the things that, I knew, but he really hammered home for me was that our karma is met on the level of our reactions. And our reactions become patterns. And I was thinking, it's true. The same thing can happen to 10 people, and each of them can react differently. Let's say somebody gets insulted, one of them shoots them, one of them, slaps them, one of them runs away hurt, or one of them says, you know what, it doesn't have anything to do with me. Bless you, but I'm not going to take it personal. So it's like you're saying that what's happening to us on the outside in a way is a test for our reaction. And then if we have a pattern of reacting in a particular way, it's going to continue.
Right,
I think that's what I'm hearing you say, that if he's getting rejection and and he's doubting himself, like you're saying, is that a pattern? What do you do when you feel rejected? Do you get hurt, or do you see that, okay, what's going on here? What are my other alternatives or other options?
Budget time to go within and start to express the true you to the subconscious, in which the collective conscious of all humans is connected. And when your consciousness goes in there, you will draw to yourself the next opportunity. Mm-hmm. And there may be several.
Yeah, that's what the work I do with regressions. When people go into the subconscious, like you're saying, I think it's most valuable when they don't just see necessarily a past life, but they see their pattern that has been enacted throughout lifetimes.
Exactly.
So they realize that people have changed, but they have a certain pattern that they're in this life to try to repair. But I think it's such a difference when you think the pattern is outside of you versus you're the author and creator of that pattern.
Exactly.
and I also, like, another thing I always say is that there's like a jet lag with your karma. Like, if you've been a jerk for 10 years and all of a sudden you change, don't expect that the next 6 months all of a sudden all your karma is going to change. You're going to have a clearing before you start meeting what you've reaped or what you've sown, and then there'll come a time. So sometimes you do have to endure a time. I've changed myself, but I'm still getting a backlash.
It's that classic 40 days and 40 nights that you see in Old Scripture and New Testament and other mystical teachings. That's the journey and the challenge of the soul, often called the dark night of the soul.
I also saw it in that movie Clockwork Orange. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
He was a really bad guy, beat up everybody, and then they totally desensitized him to violence. And so then he goes back into the world, and everybody, first they're afraid of him, but they realize he's changed, so they all beat him up. He's he's reaping his karma. Even though he has changed a pattern, it's going to take a while. If they beat him up, does he go back to his old pattern, or does he just try to, once they feel that they've gotten even, can he go forward? Good. Well,
Yeah.
we're just about at the end of our hour. Anything else you want to share? Just about anything we haven't covered?
We're all prayerful for the survival of the Association for Research and Enlightenment.
Yes.
We would like to get through this and keep on for another 100 years.
Yes.
So keep us in your prayers, and we'll get through this, and we'll come out at a new level of service.
And if you've got some extra green energy, we certainly know how to put it to good use.
Yes, yes.
Pat Belisle is
Yes.
waiting online or
Right.
on a phone. Great. Well, John, as always, I think this was a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad it's recorded. Other people have been able to benefit from it. As always, like I said, you bring out my best self, so I'm honored for the opportunity. So congratulations. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. Keep it up and keep meditating so that you got years and years and years to come.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Same to you, buddy.
Thank you. Take good care. We'll talk again soon. I think it's going to be on demand.
All
or
right.
in demand, maybe is a better way. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.